Yeah, that's right, Jameson. And for anyone who out there who watches ABC Action News, you hear us promise to bring you depth and more context on the big issues impacting our community. And what's bigger than the COVID-19 vaccine rollout? So I spent the last several weeks sitting down with people who were there on December 14th, 2020, when the first shipment of Pfizer vaccines rolled into town. And I spoke with the doctors and the scientists researching what we should expect in the months ahead.
Oh, man.
4 months ago, 20,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine arrived for the first time in the Bay Area at Tampa General Hospital.
Yay.
And clinical nurse RAFAEL Martinez gave that first COVID-19 vaccination to nurse Vanessa Arroyo.
I think I never stopped shaking. I was so nervous to look at those cameras. I given 1 million of IM shots, and this was the shot.
After saving countless lives due to the coronavirus for over a year now, Martinez says he had mixed emotions when holding that COVID vaccine in his hands for the very first time.
Everything came to mind, everybody. It was the first responders, it was the scientists, it was the community. How finally we have that final tool that we need to help our community fight this, I call it invisible enemy that nobody sees and it chooses its targets. And finally we have the vaccine to help us.
It's literally history unfolding right in front of you. And I know that it was such a privilege to be there that day.
Video journalist Taylor Vinson has worked at ABC Action News for almost a decade and was the only news videographer to record that historic moment for stations and networks around the country and the world.
It was just this kind of incredible moment of me being up close and personal, just inches away from these tiny little vials that were going to change the world. So that's the moment that I know I'm gonna remember for the rest of my life.
And after covering countless stories of tragic loss during this pandemic, Vincent was deeply moved to be filming what would finally save lives.
I hope that I was able to be a small part that day of sort of heralding to the nation, to the world, there's help on the way. There's help on the way.
When I would walk a COVID unit and I would look in the rooms of these COVID patients, it's scary. They're scared. It's a real disease. They're fighting for their lives. They can't breathe.
Tampa General Hospital CEO John COURIS says watching how the coronavirus has affected the Bay Area has been life-changing. So when he found out TGH was selected to be the only hospital in the Bay Area to receive the first round of vaccines, he was proud. But even more proud of his employees' strength, grit, and resiliency during this unprecedented time.
To watch my team care for these people, these human beings, these souls that we're responsible for was amazing. It was absolutely amazing.
And when those 20,000 doses arrived, COURIS says he was finally optimistic about the future.
For the first time in a very long time, I felt very hopeful. The vaccine works, it's effective, you have to trust the science.
Because the vaccine here in Florida is now open to all ages, reaching herd immunity could be in the very near future. But scientists still warn because the coronavirus is a global pandemic, the variants continue to spread and develop around the world, and we can't let our guard down.
So this really is a global problem. We need to be thinking about global vaccination. We also need to be thinking about global surveillance. So if we're going to update this vaccine every 3 years or something, we really better know what's happening globally so we can update it accurately.
Dr. John WHERRY has been studying COVID variants and says they're constantly changing because the virus continues to mutate and spread.
So the longer we let the virus spread unchecked, the more risk we have of variants arising that our vaccines are not good at protecting from.
Other doctors have similar concerns about the spread of new, even more contagious variants.
Because Florida's a a place where there's a lot of international travel. As you kind of referenced, there's a lot of commingling of potential virus exposures, and now you end up with all the different types of variants that you'll see around the world.
TGH's Dr. Abe Schwartzberg has been researching the COVID variants as well with new technology. He uses a patient's molecular fingerprint to better understand exactly which strain of any virus or disease they have.
So being able to sequence based on a blood draw or a biopsy allows us to be very specific and then tailor therapy as needed.
I would highly recommend getting vaccinated. In fact, it's a privilege if you consider many of the countries that don't have access to vaccine.
Dr. Sita Lakshmi is also on the front lines of studying the new variants as the medical director at Tampa General's new Global Emerging Disease Institute. And with thousands still dying from COVID, Lakshmi is urging everyone to get the vaccine.
I know there are questions around fertility and the long-term effects. And really, if you look at infectious disease in general, the viruses have a lot more control over your body to cause infertility than any vaccine ever.
And Lakshmi believes for our community to heal, we must honor all the suffering and grief we've been through, but to now have hope.
We have come a long way from the unknowns, the fears. We have better tools today and better understanding. And I would really ask the community out there, please get your questions answered, please get vaccinated.